next we have Tatiana Ryckman, who's born in Cleveland, Ohio. She is the author of the novella I Don't Think of You Until I Do, and 2 chapbooks of prose, 20-something and VHS and Why It's Hard to Live. Tatiana is the editor of Awst Press and assistant editor at Sunny Outside Press. She has attended residencies at Yaddo and Arthub and teaching creative writing workshops through the University of Texas's Informal classes.
That was great. I'm so glad that I got to read with you guys, and Connie, looking forward to it. And it's fun to be back here at Malvern. I was thinking about what sections to read, and I was thinking about how in high school I was at this super Christian boarding school, but my friends would read romance novels, and I wasn't really interested in reading romance novels, so I just skipped the good parts. So that's what I'm going to do tonight. I'm just going to read only the sex scenes, which is what you call the good part of it. All right, so this is from I Don't Think of You Until I Do. And as you can see, that's actually a significant portion of the book. One evening, while taking up space in your apartment, I took a photo of you. The sun had set, and you didn't anticipate the flash in the dark room. As the air cooled, the hair on my arm stood on end, and I wished I were closer. You were only across the room, but any distance greater than touching always felt impossibly far. I wondered what your image would mean when I saw it in the future, and I thought of Susan Sontag's assertion that there's something predatory in the act of taking a picture. It turns people into objects that can be symbolically possessed. I didn't ask for the feeling to be mutual, only if it was. This is how easy it was. I saw a cartoon of 2 mice fucking and thought of you and let myself think us. And because a mouse on its back called out, "This feels so right," and because this phrase so nearly echoed the things I'd been repeating in my own mind while lying on my back, reimagining you filling in the space I carved out of myself and how right it felt at the time that I felt it, I began to question the rightness of the feeling I was reimagining, in which you were participating in absentia, your not being standing in for being. And because I'd begun to doubt my own recollections and their validity and the colors I'd applied to my memory of the shadows that compose you, I wanted to find something concrete to fill the gaps. And so I looked up lingerie on eBay and jerked off to Asians in $4 heart-shaped pasties 3 times and went to sleep in the mess. Sometimes, while another lover prepared breakfast, I wanted to fuck you in a snowbank. Other times, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in a window. Startled by the image, I believed for a moment that I was not alone. You moved swiftly into the spaces where you could have been if you weren't moving into other spaces that I was also suddenly interested in. The filter of a cigarette painted gold by your lungs, a steering wheel or a doorknob, everything that fit under your hands, the pieces of fabric you slid your body in and out of. In and out, the painfully practical gestures of your invisible life turned erotic when I imagined them acted out over my grocery purchases. Your distant movements obscuring small talk with the cashier, the pornographic everyday of every day. I grew restless with my inability to replace you with math or the study of foreign languages. I pretended to know the difference between anxiety and a lack of impulse control. Facebook suggested we become friends because I kept composing messages made of all the gym equipment I wanted to have sex with you on. Did you have fantasies? I did. I'd ask you to marry me and you would say no and we would never talk again and just feel a little unhappy for the rest of our lives, but would never be able to know how that feeling differed from the alternatives. When I said forever, did you think together or not together? Because all of my grand gestures were neurons train hopping on thoughts of you, you couldn't see them from the other side of my skull or the country. Every thought was another plan to prove my devotion that you didn't respond to. And I didn't blame you because no one is a mind reader, I hear. And we all get busy. And you got very busy. When I didn't hear from you for days, I began to imagine, in torturous detail, that busy meant someone else was moving you from one all-consuming task to the next. From the bed we'd shared to the floor I hadn't had a chance to claim with my body on yours. From the specific taste of their sweat to the art they inspired you to make. Every truncated message you sent was an example of your infatuation with the person I had imagined for the explicit purpose of seducing you away from me. Soon, between the flights I took in my mind to your room and the ways I'd hold you in my mouth and the monument you'd once built to our hours together in your living room, this someone else would occasionally step out of my own fantasies of you to remind me how far away I really was. I once knew a woman whose daughter had died very young and had been gone a long time. The woman spoke constantly of her child's wisdom and brave spirit. One day I met the woman's son. I was shocked by his existence, but I understood. You were my dead daughter. There was no room in my sorrow for anyone else, least of all the people who were really there. But during long periods of silence, I would convince myself that nothing had transpired between us, that my willingness to undo my life at your feet was as ordinary as lust. But then you might write, "Hey," and I would reply that I'd spread myself out thinking of you already 8 times that day, a loop of you pressing me against your desk, conflated with 2 Danish women writhing on the floor of a rowboat, still playing in my mind, and you wouldn't say anything at all. For a while, I thought my memories were enough to stand in for you, but even my imagination had limits, like how every time I touched myself, you were in the same shadow. I replayed the same loop of 3 women inserting produce into each other on a kitchen table, and our feet caught in the same blankets. We kept saying the same things, fuck, and oh God, and come for me. Sweat pooled in the same hidden places between us and behind my knees. If I projected you in my mind through a new summer, would you notice? And I guessed not. I guess that's how everything stayed exactly the same. We made it through the weekend with calm excitement. We were saving some for later, making plans. The thing we'd stopped saying out loud was, how long can this really last? In bed, you put your hands together in a way that made me think, here is the church, here is the steeple, but you meant that we should put our heads between each other's legs. And it was like a code in a dream that only the dreamer understands, and I was passing into wakefulness. I remember most clearly the queasy, persistent optimism. After weeks apart, I realized we would be having sex the following day, at least probably, and I touched myself and wondered if the reality of you would kill the you I'd been sleeping with in my mind. I watched one woman accidentally walk in on her friend masturbating and then shyly join in, and I thought maybe my hands were not getting the pleasure they deserved. I instructed my body to give more. I told my hands to imagine I was you. It was like that thing kids try in high school where they make their hands numb so it feels like being touched by a stranger, but in reverse. I wanted to numb my body so my hands wouldn't know who they were touching. I wanted to be with someone who wasn't me, and I wanted to be them at the same time, and you were already a familiar stand-in. I was surprised to find even my version of you was not what it once was. The fantasy had been obscured by a jungle of quotidian motion. Your turned head faded when I watched my memory too closely, your lips disappearing from my wrist just when I thought I felt them. When you got up from the bed, you faced the window and your back was to me, and you looked so much older than you had moments before. You were a silhouette against the wilderness I'd been living in. I stayed in bed and continued to touch myself while you paced the room, already half gone. The fading light on the yellow walls and bookshelves reminded me of the many days I'd been alone. You pulled your shirt on like you were leaving, maybe just to the next room, but it had the crushing weight of an ending. I pressed myself back into the pillows and wished I could believe that it could be over so easily, that I could just get up and reinvest myself in my future rather than ours. Instead, I came while imagining 5 women fucking on a tarp, and then I went to pick at cookies that had gone stale in the August humidity while you worked in the next room. We were so good at being apart that even when I was on top of you, your thumb pressing between my lips while your fingers cradled my jaw, I didn't know if I could touch you, if you would say no, or if you would vanish. I was trying to replace you with the image of you I'd sacrificed my longing to all year. I was distracted by the inevitability of your departure. I was distracted by the group dynamic. I was distracted by breakfast and the dog and you. Was I falling out of love or into it? Was this just what it felt like to be in the same place? Sometimes I missed you most when you were close. On the previous page, this person said that they would come for a visit. I wanted to believe you would return, and I followed the pipe dream of your possible visit as far as it would take me. I said to a version of you I kept in my mind, let's assume you do come. Let's assume we find a motel in a suburb I've never been to, a place where I can't show you that museum I texted from when I was feeling mean about all the art. Let's assume we have a 6-pack and a limited number of TV channels, and the blankets are itchy, and the windows don't open. Let's assume these are our surroundings, and nothing is walking distance. That is, we can see things from the second-story railing that wraps around the motel, but we cannot walk to the places we see because they are on the other side of a highway. We could drive, but we already have the six-pack and are unmotivated. So we turn back to the room. You smoke a cigarette in the doorway. I'm jealous of the cigarette and want to be in your mouth, and then maybe I will be. And then maybe you'll have my hair in your fist, and I will be thinking I should not be thinking about how I am always being pulled toward you. I should be thinking about the fist that is pulling me. I should be turned on by the 4 hairs you missed while shaving, but I will be distracted by them. And then we'll switch places, and I'll come, and we'll fall asleep, and then it will be morning, and we'll have to leave anyway. Or let's assume you don't come. It'll just be the same shit. All right. In the morning, I sipped at your coffee and we agreed. Things were no less fucked, but we were comfortable with that. It had always been this way. Nothing had changed because of one bad night. Not really. There was a comfort in the resignation. Maybe that was the problem. But it was the first time I had questioned what right I had to my wealth of desire. The first time it occurred to me that my fantasies might not be anything to strive for, that you might not be a fantasy at all. You might just be someone who lived very far away. And that's how it happened that I read a book and wondered what you would think before I created a thought on your behalf. I wondered, what's precious about wanting? I remembered a short film a friend had burned to a disc for me in college. At the edge of a mountain, or an Italian scenic overlook, or likely in front of a sheet painted to look like the edge of a mountain, a blonde woman bent over a low stone wall. Another woman lost her arm deep inside the blonde, while another licked contentedly at the blonde's exposed asshole. In my recollection, there's another woman, a fourth, who fondles the blonde's breasts and coaches her to come, or to come now, or to come for her. She chants encouraging phrases between performative moans of pleasure. But there's no way to verify any of this. I've lost the disc, and I'm not even sure any of those people ever existed. The cartoon of 2 mice fucking just became something sad my friend had drawn, because while one mouse called out, "This feels so right," the other mouse seemed surprised by the pronouncement, uneasy under the weight of such emotion. I stopped believing there was inherent magic in things outside my control. The world was just the place where we kept all of our problems. The books I'd elected to speak on my behalf became books you just hadn't returned yet. The pop songs I'd attributed to you broke everyone else's heart too. That was the point. Suddenly it seemed that everyone was counting down to some inevitable end. And so I readied myself for the inevitable. But when I parked around the corner from your building on my last night in town and walked the familiar sidewalk back to the doorway where you stood smoking in the fading sunshine, as everyone else in the world left their day job, the whole city distracted with the final days of summer, the thing that happened was not an ending. The foolish lurch in my chest was not an ending. Your expression was not an ending. You said, "Can we lie down for a moment?" I talked quickly about things that didn't matter on our way to meet friends for dinner. Before the food arrived, I found that I could not remember if we were pretending we were together or pretending we were not together. I had to fight the temptation to project myself onto every surface of your life. You squeezed my knee under the table as I smiled idiotically into my pasta. We went to an event where everyone knew you. We held hands in front of them. We kissed quickly in dark corners and empty stairwells. We ate phallic rainbow candy and looked for a place to undress each other. Every room we found filled the moment we came close, and it was getting late, so we left with the same giddiness we had buried under distance and caution all year. It came up uncontrollably like vomit, both terrifying and promising relief. In that final dark, it was suddenly easy to pretend it was the previous summer, as if our want was the season we'd been waiting for. But I had learned to fear giving you everything and held a portion of tenderness back for myself. With your fingers in my mouth, I realized that this could be the last time we would be together for the year, or forever. It seemed like the only way to have what we wanted was to be certain it would end. Thanks.